Do you yearn for travel that involves outdoor adventure and learning? I do. I also have a passion for all things farming and agriculture. I've traveled to exotic jungles to learn about growing chocolate. I even once owned my own organic vegetable and sunflower farm. And now I'm planning my journey back to agriculture. Agritourism, defined as travel that involves some type of agricultural experience. Agritourism is all about entertaining, but the marketing strategist in me knows that at its core, agritourism is really about educating, and education affects change. My future farm needs to deliver a profound experience to all of its visitors. It needs to educate people about food, health, and climate. Join me to learn from experienced agritourism farmers and entrepreneurs and help me build my future farm strategy. And who knows, maybe one day soon you'll find yourself in a tropical jungle cutting open cacao pods with a machete, or savoring an outdoor plant-to-plate community dinner with 100 guests at a farm in Illinois. So let's tap into the agritourist in you. It's Jen Ross, your Agritourist podcast host. We are headed to Tassie today. That's Tasmania for those who are not familiar. And we are chatting with Tim Parsons. Tim and his wife Jane are sixth-generation Tasmanian farmers who own Curringa Farm. Curringa Farm is a 750-acre farm focused on raising sheep, growing crops for seeds, and growing opium for pharmaceutical medicine. I bet you that got your attention. The farm is a favorite farmstay with many cottages on the property and is expanding as we speak. Tim tells us how he worked to revitalize and grow his farm. In my opinion, he is a master marketer who understands the real value of building relationships, sometimes in a very grassroots way, something I think he may have learned from his mom. Upon entering this conversation, I knew very little about Tasmania. But now I feel like I have a great connection in Tassie and look forward to one day visiting Curringa Farm.
Hello, Jen.
Hi, Tim. How are you?
Very well, thanks. Here we go.
There you are. Perfect.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. Good morning on your side. Good morning the next day.
Yeah, it gets a bit confusing sometimes.
Yes, it does.
Nice to meet you. A bit of not a coincidence, but the power of networking and contacts.
Yep, absolutely. So why don't we begin? Tell me about Tasmania. I don't know really much about it, so educate me a bit.
All righty. Well, Tasmania's a little island, as the island state down on the southern edge of Australia, and it's part of Australia. And we have about 500,000 residents. The island is the same size as Scotland, but I can't give you a square mile or a square kilometre measurement on that just now. And it's a lovely island. It's got beautiful coastal scenery, it's got mountains, and it's got highly productive agricultural land. And in Tasmania, we produce fruit, we produce beef and meat, and we also have a forestry industry and a very good tourism industry. So look, it's a beautiful island state. And it was colonised in the early 1800s by the British, and it was a penal settlement. And then it's just grown up as an island state revolving around agriculture. It's a beautiful temperate climate, so cold winters and warm summers. And then we have beautiful autumns and green, lush springs. So that enables us to grow our temperate produce.
Excellent. So where do the tourists mostly come from?
So Tasmania has about 1.3 million tourists a year, and 1 million of those are from mainland Australia, coming and visiting from interstate. And then we have about 300,000 internationals, and they're a global mix from North America, or right throughout Asia and also long haul up to the UK and Europe.
Okay.
So our
Excellent.
business is 80% international visitation by the nature of what we do. We enjoy lots of domestic visitors through COVID, and we've got a mix of the both, but our primary customer is international.
So you grew up there because I know you're the sixth generation of I guess for the farm, I guess. So you grew up there, spent most of your time there.
Yep. So my ancestor came to Tasmania in 1823, and the farm that we live on now, called Curringa Farm, it had a different name back then, but he owned this land in 1834. He sold it, and my grandfather bought it back 130 years later in 1969. So I've lived here for 55 years, and with my wife and my family. So we're grandfather, my father, myself, and our children. So four generations on Curringa, and a further three generations before that in Tasmania farming.
Wow, that's intense. I guess you
There's
like
a lot of history there.
it.
So our Tasmanian tourism industry has got a bit of a catchphrase about the state's brand phrase is Tasmanian, and we hold that very closely as far as we our family, our produce, and what we offer, that we do symbolise Tasmania by the nature of what we do.
That's great. Wow, that's impressive though. The commitment. So I love that. So tell me about the name Coringa, that was from one of the previous owners' names, or is that something, some
Look, the
other
name
symbolism?
Coringa. We are sure that it's got some indigenous connotations, meaning black duck. That we've got a lovely bird sanctuary on the farm. We can't trace that to it being a Tasmanian word. And there's a bit of history about place names. So in our valley and in our region, lots of farms are named from Scottish or English backgrounds, and and then other farms are named just through by choice or whatever. And this farm, the previous owner on this farm happened to call it Coringa for reasons unknown.
So how do you define agritourism? I mean, I speak to a lot of people and the definitions obviously slightly change. I'm just curious how you define it.
And I've been really passionate about agritourism for a long time by the nature of what we do. So my mum built a little Farmstay cottage on the farm in 1984. So we've been doing agritourism for 40 years by hosting visitors to the farm, talking to them about what we do, and showing them things that we take for granted, and they take away an amazing learning experience. Some just like to sit in their room and look out the window. Others will join on a farm tour, and others will interact with us over a conversation about particular things. So the definition is really the definition is for me personally is about that longevity, that multi-generational family business, where in a lot of instances a farming family or a farming business needs something to diversify to enable future generations to continue on. I believe that by the farm being a registered business or an entity that has a degree of primary production, so a primary production unit, be it dairy or fibre or food or vegetables, and where that product is taken further or enhanced through an education process to be shown to a visitor to the farm. And so the two tie in well together, where that primary product of agriculture has then continued the journey to be shown to tourists, primarily on farm, because by inviting people onto the farm to have a look, it's creating that cycle of income, farm diversity, and continuum. Now, that's my view as a mature operator. There's two other views, and one of those is that the fabric of products and smaller holdings and short-term ownership, where people have made a lifestyle change and have got a block of land and have chosen to do something intensive or on a small scale or a more of a hobby scale, where that might be honey or food cooking or education or cooking schools, cheese making. Those units also represent agri-tourism, but they're not pinned back to that long multi-generational family or that working farm historically. And the third aspect is, what do the consumers want to see? Because the consumers can't differentiate between an artificial or a monetized product and a farming business that is doing things the way that's already been done. And so if the consumer is entertained is not quite the right word, but if the consumer is educated, the consumer contributes back to that business and it makes that monetary cycle go round, then as long as the consumer's happy, that means that regardless of the size or scale of the agritourism business and what it presents, it must be genuine and authentic and be a credible product to offer back to those consumers.
So back in 1984, I think that's the date you said, when they built that cottage, what was her thinking? Were you doing anything from an agritourism perspective before then? Were you doing any tours? And what was that pivotal moment? Because it obviously, modified things a bit.
Yep. Look, farming is really tough. And I've got a couple of timelines, but in essence, back in the 1980s, we'd had a string of pretty good years, and wool was a very profitable commodity, running sheep, and the seasons were good. And then in the mid 1980s, the economy started to falter a bit, and then we had a drought in the early 1990s. So I guess the decision by my parents to build this little cottage was to um, enable my mum to have something creative to do. It was a vision that they wanted to realise and potentially have a little retirement cottage on the farm where they could live happily ever after. But as the seasons got tougher in the late 1980s, early 90s, it became a very valuable mainstay for income. And along the way, that supplementary income also assisted my parents to educate myself and my two brothers through school opportunities, etc.
Wow.
So they fell into it as a nice little wannabe. I guess if we go back a previous generation, my paternal grandparents were always very hospitable, and they were involved in agricultural circles where visiting delegations of wool or beef or meat would come to their farm through the previous 84, through maybe the 50s and 60s, the 60s and 70s. And so that was never a formal agri-tourism thing. They were doing it without it actually having a title. So my parents created this little diverse enterprise, and it coincided with aligning with Tourism Tasmania, our state government tourism industry
Okay.
was hosting some travel agents to Tasmania, and they came to our farm for a look. And it's called a familiarisation program, and that resulted in the creation of a formal farm tour business where visiting coach groups from Japan would come for a barbecue lunch and a farm tour.
Oh,
So
wow.
all of a sudden we had two products. We had a bed and breakfast cottage that was supplying the sort of local Australian holiday maker, and then we just tripped into the international arena with visiting groups from Japan. So
Wow.
it's a big story in there.
No, that's great. But obviously your family had the ability to connect to people. Some people don't want, they don't want to deal with people. They want to farm. But, your family seemed to have that ability way back when, naturally, before, like you said, it was called agritourism. And then it's evolved from there. So, okay, so your mom started, you guys built that home. So take me on the journey to now. What's happened? How is it evolved? How has the agritourism component of your farm evolved? Because I know in reading your website, you have a lot of opportunities for people to come to visit.
Okay, so I need to go back a little bit before we go forwards. How did it become to evolve? Um, my brain was racing ahead of your question just then. The Okay, so they did the diversification, and my parents were very progressive. Then we had a major fault because, no, I'll go back a little bit. That when my mum did this, socially, the social norms back in the 1980s, um, the the wife's place on a farm was not on the farm. It was looking after the kids and in the kitchen. And during this time, my mum and a few other farming wives who now would be referred to as business partners, but my mum and a few other farming wives built these accommodation cottages throughout Tasmania and created a little nucleus, a little marketing social group. And they got together and it provided them that little bit of independence. It provided them that contact because up until that time, it pretty much was looking after the kids, doing the schooling, preparing the food, and keeping the home homely. And so my mum, along with those other ladies, ventured into this new business that gave them this independence, and it also contributed back to the farm. And my dad was very much supportive, and the people came, and he talked to the visitors and talked to them about the farm, etc. But it was pretty much a good setup. But the really tough times in the 90s of drought and financial difficulty, we went into really tough financial times where many farmers in Tasmania were getting assistance from the government to help them get through this tough period.
Okay.
And along with that came incredibly high interest rates. So interest was at 17 or 18%. We had a massive amount of debt, and something had to give. And my parents weren't alone, but it happened, and it was a difficult time when my parents separated. And so the farm went into this period you know, um, demise. And it was at that time that Jane and we'd got married. So we were struggling along as employees on the farm, and we chose to purchase the farm off my father. Um, and my parents separated. So there was some financial balancing to do there. And Jane and I took it on. Now, the part that we took on, we knew that there was an opportunity in tourism to give us the strength that we needed to get ahead. And so we built it up. off the back of what my parents did, but we took the reins, and we didn't really change the basics, but we've hugely changed the delivery and the custom. So that's a big story. There is this major hiccup that spiraled Jane and myself into ownership and facilitated my parents' exit from the business, which wasn't pretty. It's all amicable now, but it was a major disruption that that without the agritourism component, it might have happened earlier or it might have happened later. Nobody knows.
Right. That was pretty it was pretty amazing what your mom though was doing with those other women. Very impressive. Very
Yep.
impressive.
She would pack up the car and go marketing, take brochures. There would be two or three of her compatriots would go around to the west coast of Tasmania and call into every service station, cafe, restaurant, tourist souvenir shop. G'day, how you going? We're from Curringa Farm, or we're from the other businesses in central Tassie. And if you've got anybody looking for accommodation, give them one of these little brochures and send them our way. And she made a very, very successful business out of one accommodation cottage, in the domestic audience. And then the Japanese customers started coming as self-drive holiday makers, and in parallel the coach tours started coming through, and that created a bigger monster. It was a nice monster, but the farm tours is a bigger engine than one little cottage on the farm.
Right. 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 Absolutely. So tell me about the farm today. You have 750 acres. That's a lot.
Yep. So look, once again, it depends on the customer, because when we get urban customers coming from Singapore or Hong Kong, they think it's massive. And I reference Curringa Farm as being the same size as Sentosa Island, which is the holiday island off the coast of Singapore. And for our Hong Kong visitors, I reference it that it's 4 MTR subway stops across Hong Kong Island from Central Station until Causeway Bay. But when other farmers are listening to this, you've got farmers up there in North America that are on big rangelands and ranches, and we've got farms here in Australia that are over 1 million acres in size. So our farm is small to middle size. It is very, very productive though. So it's rolling hills. We've got a tiny bit of remaining forest left that we've conserved for nature. And it's got changing soil types. It's got some beautiful scenic spots. It borders alongside a hydroelectric dam, a water supply, so we can irrigate.
Nice.
And on the farm, we've got right now about 1,200 mother sheep ewes for breeding, and our primary business is growing lambs for meat production. So we are breeders, and we sell some lambs straight to the butcher, but most of our lambs we sell to a middleman or another farmer who's a trader. So that farmer buys our small lambs, gets them up to that uniform size, and then they sell them into the meat cycle of domestic Australia.
Okay.
That's the animal bit. We've got a few pets around, some Highland cows and some alpacas and some chickens and dogs. But the thing about agritourism is the story. So we've got two other very interesting stories. So we grow opium poppies for a pharmaceutical company.
Oh, that's right. I saw something about that. Okay.
You saw something about that?
I saw
So we
something
can
said
only give a limited.
pharmaceutical, so I was curious what that was. Okay.
Well, the short answer is heroin, but the proper answer is codeine and morphine. Now, we can only give a general overview on that, but it's a very interesting topic, and we can explain the basics of we grow in Tasmania because we've got excellent security. Our industry, research and development, is the best in the world amongst, and we grow this product that offers pain relief to people that are desperately in need. There's also a dark side to opium about abuse and supply and all of those things that we must be very responsible about as well. But in December, when the poppies are flowering, it makes for beautiful photographs. We've got a zero entry policy, zero tolerance of no customers can go into the fields and all that security stuff. But it creates a little story about this niche little crop that we're actually sowing the seeds next week, and they'll grow up and they'll flower in December, and we'll harvest the drugs in January. The second business another business that we have is we grow seeds. So our soil is not perfect for food, but it's perfect for growing seeds of vegetables. And so because it's like I mentioned, we breed the baby lambs and then we sell them to another farmer who finishes them. We grow the seeds of our vegetables and export them around the world for other farmers to take our seeds and grow food. And so this year we're growing carrots, and those carrots are under contract to go to France. And last year our carrot seed went to the Netherlands. So that's a 12-month story as well. So our customers can see these little baby carrots growing in the soil right now. In a few months' time, they'll start to get a bit taller. In December, we'll have bees in the crop pollinating and making honey. And then the flowers will look different. There'll be big white flowers. And then the crop will dry off and we'll harvest it in about March or April. And so we've got this 12-month story for people to look at and learn about food production, because so many people just think that farmers go out in the morning and go and dig up a carrot and that's called farming. But when we get into plant breeding and seed production and export quality, it's a much more technical story that we can offer.
So did you and your wife and Jane bring those businesses in as newer businesses, or were those things that you were doing, your family was doing in the past?
The sheep farming, we made a switch from wool to meat because of our land type and our climate back a long time ago. I grew poppies in partnership with my father and also the seed businesses. We grew it all together. We have been growing seed crops for, I think, 32 or 32 years.
Wow. Wow.
And poppies on and off for the same time. So farming is a very inherent, profession. And so by matching soil type and our ability, we don't have any perennial crops like grapes or fruit trees where we harvest every year. So these annual crops that we grow, we rotate around, and we try and do that in a way that our length of rotation is keeping the soil healthy and the weeds down and managing disease and all of that stuff. And so we've been doing it. We have some very good successes and we have some very good failures as well, and that's the vagaries of farming. So the diversity of the farm, the farm's got diversity within itself. The farm business provides us with about 30% of our income. Now that it's gone down a tiny bit, but it's still pretty much the same as what it's always done. But we've created income from the accommodation, which is also 30% of our income, and the farm tours are 30% of our income as well. So we've tripled our turnover by introducing agritourism from a farm production system that is still doing what it's always done.
How are customers finding you right now? Obviously, we have more tools. We don't need mom just going out into town. But I absolutely love that because I think what she started back then was, you know, that's true marketing, that's true sales.
Right,
Um,
absolutely. And it's been lost now with social media and this
yes, that
click and
connection.
tap
She connected
stuff.
to people. She made that
Yeah.
connection.
Yeah.
And it was her saying it, and she had the passion for the business and knew the business. So for her doing that. So
Yeah.
I'm just curious
So the
how,
authenticity,
yeah,
the
yeah.
the authenticity. So in amongst it all, I bummed out of school. I did 1 year of college and came home. I wasn't forced, but I didn't have any other option. So I came back onto the farm and I did a training apprenticeship, and I thought my lot was trudging around in the dirt for the rest of my life because that's what 5 generations had done before me. And the values that our parents taught us, and they didn't know any better themselves, they just did what they thought needed to be done. And so Jane and I attempt to present or deliver how we would like to receive when we travel. And along the way, being a community-minded family, we contributed to the local tourism group, the same as what my mum did, the same local tourism association. We call them LTAs here. And I matured into engaging with the regional tourism association and then engaging with the state tourism body. And along the way, as a fledgling business, which we were when we started, there comes a time when you've got to stick your neck right out and make a commitment to invest in some form of marketing. And so Jane and I went to a national trade show in Australia, and we sat in this booth and we had 100 appointment slots, and I think we filled about 15 of them. And travel agents would sit down opposite us from all over the world and say, "Who are you and what are you doing?" And we'd say, "Oh, we're farmers from Tasmania and we'd like you to come and see our farm." And they almost laughed at us and said, "Well, look, you've got merit there, but we need some pricing structure. We need some commissionable rates. We need to have other products in the area that we can attach it to." And we persevered, and I went back myself the next year and the first couple of years. And when you go marketing, now we book a hotel room and we match up with other businesses, and it's all a bit more professional. But my first few years, I stayed in backpacker hostels for $25 a night to make ends meet because we really had no resources to do this. Anyway, I jumped on, one thing led to another, and then made some contacts, and we suddenly realised that we were pitching at the European market when our product was really suitable or perfect for the Asian market. And so we started to focus on the market that was attracted to us. And then I believe I was one of the first Tasmanians to go into China alone and unaccompanied, knocking on doors of travel agents from contacts I'd met at these trade shows previously. So off I went and gained that measure of respect of here is the farmer from Tasmania, Australia, coming all the way over to our office and showing us photos of kangaroos and sheep and steaks cooking on a barbecue and soft pillows on a bed out looking out a window at the mountains. And that respect and delivery and that continuation of engaging through the marketing thing. And all of this is no training, no school, no degree, no nothing, just winging it and enjoying that journey, because that gives me a release as well to travel and to travel internationally and do the marketing that then I can do side trips and learn about their cultures and pick up a little bit about the Chinese language, etc. Now, the interesting thing about that is over time, demographics change. So I mentioned our parents enjoyed Japanese business for 10 years during the 1990s or the mid 80s to mid 90s. Then the Japanese economy crashed and Tourism Tasmania and Tourism Australia courted Singapore as a new demographic. So we had Singapore coming through the 90s into the 2000s.
Okay.
And then Jane and I captured the Hong Kong market to the point that 60% of our visitors all came from Hong Kong. So we had too many eggs in that basket, but we didn't ask for them. They came to us because we got sort of famous. And then since COVID, there's been another radical shift because we've got the confidence of Europe and UK and North American travel agents that have recognised this very, very highly reputable agritourism product down on this island off the edge of Australia. And so 15% of all our overnight customers last year came from UK, Europe, and North America. And that market's growing now while our traditional Asia market is still sort of rejigging and finding its mix in amongst flights and cost of travel and things. So we're managing those demographic changes as well on our marketing journey.
Sounds very impressive. Very impressive. No, because a lot of people don't do what you've done. And like I said, I definitely think it started with your mom. So
yeah. No, there's a lot there, and it blows us away. We've been on this roller coaster, and before COVID, our growth was almost vertical. We had exponential growth, and it was really exciting. It gave us some finance to play with. It gave us the ability to extend the marketing. And we reached this really strong point of maturity. But there's something I'd like to say about COVID and agritourism. That I've mentioned that we had this interest rates and drought, and we had a lot of financial difficulty back early on. And when COVID hit, the urban world felt that the sky had fallen in and businesses shut down. It was absolutely catastrophic on the global scale. But if we bring that down to countries, states, regions, cities, villages, and everyone was impacted. And the likelihood was, no income for the next 2 years. Put your staff off. Shut your business down, lose stock, all of the things that urbanites experienced was horrific. But put yourself in the shoes of a farmer over the last 200 years. So we're very good at watching the news and watching your forest fires in California or Canada or North America, where farms get burnt down and forests get lost and houses get burnt, etc. We see devastating floods in India and China and places around the world. And even you watch our fires and floods here in Australia. And then we have these crippling droughts, which go for years and years. So those three events of fire, flood, and drought is that there's a very high chance that a farming family will experience at least one of those events in their lifetime, and more likely perhaps two or three. Yeah. So when a farmer has a drought and has no income for 3 years, or if a farmer's farm burns down, all the fences and the livestock unfortunately don't survive, most do, that you've lost your whole production system. And I heard a presentation up in Italy from an Indian agritourism business where their fruit orchard, these trees were 10 or 20 years old, all got burnt in a fire. Zero income for the next 5 or 10 years. So the resilience of farmers, the agri side of these setbacks, and we still forge on. Not all of us make it, and some step out and some just cannot continue any further. But when the community pulls together and you pull on your resources and you hang in there, because this patch of dirt is our home. It's where we live. It's our livelihood. And we've been here for, in this instance, second time round, but 55 years. We've been in Tasmania for 200 years. And so when COVID hit, this was just like a natural disaster that we said, oh dear, this is pretty damn tough. And we're going to cop a hiding again. And for us, the magnitude of income that we lost was massive. It was the same as any other business. But the strength of that farming tenacity to pull through something like COVID did give us strength, because the farm supported the tourism business through COVID.
Right.
But right now, farming in Australia is really, really tough. And so our tourism business has flipped back to propping up the farm business this year. So that's some big
Yeah.
key points
Yeah.
in that primary production agri-tourism scale.
Absolutely. So you have a son or sons that
One
are
son,
they
one daughter.
okay? Are and what's the vision for the future as far as their involvement in the farm, or do they want to be involved in the farm?
All right. So Jane and I, from everything I've just told you, that Jane and I have just come through, and a few years ago now, but we've just come through a pretty tough transition period from my parents to us, and building up the business and experiencing the growth. So we are having the conversations with our son and our daughter, and there's an expectation from us and from our son that he'll come home in the next 2 or 3 years, maybe. Our daughter, she's on a career path in HR. She's working in Melbourne. She went to the big city to get a proper job, and she's very astute, and she contributes back to the decision making. But she won't come back here. It is unlikely she'll come back here to the operational side of the business. So Jane and I are discussing about equity, for ourselves to be able to retire at some point, and to introduce our son to the physical operation that we have here, of which he's all very well and truly introduced at the moment, and where the equity is for our daughter along the way. And so I'm really, really looking forward to our son Jock coming home. Right now, he's working on a farm in the middle of New South Wales, on a big grain farm. So he's driving massive big tractors, planting wheat. Our farm's 750 acres, and he's just planted somewhere around about 8 or 9 thousand acres of crops for his boss where he's working. So he's not on the biggest farms, but he's on a fairly sizable one. So he's learning. He's 25 or 26 years old. He's exploring
Mhm.
the world and gaining experience.
That's great.
And when he's ready, he'll come back. And the last thing we want to do is force our children to come back if they don't want to, because
Right.
that is also a very tough road for farming descendants, where the expectation that the children will come back and continue the
Right.
business is very high.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
So
tough.
there's a few scenarios there. The last thing we want to do is actually relinquish the land, and that'll be the absolutely last case. But at some point, Jane and I want to share and celebrate our journey, and put our feet up at the other end, because we can't do that. We can't run at this pace forever and a day either.
Do you, right now, what are your roles? Like, what do you focus most of your efforts on during the day? I mean, I know it's it's winter there, right? Right now. But what do you oversee mostly on the farm, versus Jane?
Okay, so I'd like just to go back a little step. So Jane manages the accommodation. We've talked a lot about my mum building one cottage. Just for clarity, that we now have 9 cottages on the farm. And just last month, we've purchased a house in the village, and we're renovating that. So right now, Jane's working with project managing with builders, plumbers, electricians, and painters. And we're creating a little house in the village, as part of that equity for our daughter. B, is a possible home for our son when he comes home. but see, and most importantly, as tourism revenue for travellers to meet our overflow needs in the summer. And we would like to expand on that block that we've bought. So James got this major accommodation project on the go.
Yeah.
On the farm now, we're feeding sheep every third day. They're getting ready for lambing. We've got an excavator on site. He's not working today, but we're laying extra underground irrigation lines. So I'm putting in about 400 metres of underground water mains this month. We're preparing soil to plant the opium next week, and my phone's ringing with the field officer as we're talking, but it's fine. I'll get back to him as soon as we can.
I won't keep you too long.
And then our winter maintenance. So that's the farm site, and that's normal. The farm has got a sort of a monthly calendar of events, and we've simplified the farm. Now we've simplified the farm through our tourism business. That yes, we have to be here, and there's two of us on the farm. It's flippant for me to say that I do two full-time jobs, sort of one farming and one tourism. And my marketing and my extracurricular activities take up a lot of time, but that's my passion and I enjoy it. But as long as the primary activity is animal health and welfare, so feeding the sheep, maintaining the sheep, looking after them, managing the crops for disease and ensuring that they grow to their best potential is also very high. And then we have to work around our visiting groups. So yesterday we had a family of 11 adults and 6 children from Indonesia. And they came for a barbecue lunch and a farm tour, and we fed the Highland cows and we gave them a tour around the farm and showed them the dogs rounding up the sheep. And the kids were like a bunch of stray cats running around everywhere, and they took a bit of managing, and nobody can speak English, so there's a few translation bits and pieces happening from the tour guide. And then we've got customers checking out from accommodation who stayed overnight, and then this afternoon more customers will be checking in. So we're always eyes and ears open for the needs and wants of our visitors wherever they're coming from as well. So that's a pretty normal day.
Okay. Sounds exciting. So let me ask you a question. When your son takes over or transitions, what do you and Jane want to do? How do you have a role in the farm, or do you guys want to travel? What would you like to do?
Our weak spot is all those little bits. And I just remembered the thing that I was going to say before. So in amongst it all, we have an extra overhead called presentation that we have to be on game and have the farm looking neat and tidy over and above. It's not fair for me to say a normal farmer, but when you're open to the public coming every day. So we've got little projects of things that I'm growing some roses, and we're growing our own raspberries for pick your own raspberry fruit, just some little patches, maintaining our own home and surrounds, our front entrance to the farm, all those little jobs that we try and squeeze in between the money-making delivery production site. So I would really like to do all those things that I want to do that haven't got to. And that's the old adage that when you retire, you're busier than what you were when you were working to get that stuff done. We would love to stay here and be part of our community, but also give our son some breathing space. And you mentioned earlier on about, we made a comment about agri-tourism and how you deliver it. And in the world, there are some amazing farmers with amazing farms and amazing production systems, but they'll be absolutely hopeless at presenting to a group of visitors because of their personality skills or their time consumed with actually doing the farming bit. They're busy doing the busy and inability to market or grow.
Yep.
Then you've got some horrific farms which are run down and broken and have got health and safety problems. But maybe the farmer sees an opportunity, or the farming family, of opening the gate up, or inviting visitors to come and have a look at the farm. But you've got a totally unsuitable environment for delivery, whilst the farming family probably have excellent personal skills to actually do the talking and present and say, here, have a scone. The top looks pretty good, but it's burnt black underneath, or something like that. And so that balance of managing your production system and delivering to the consumer, it is very, very hard work to hold it all together. And we've got an amazing team that help us. We employ 6 casuals and 1 full-time staff on a farm that, if we were just farming, I would do it myself, just Jane and me, with no staff at all. So we're contributing back to our local community as well.
That's great. That's terrific. Excellent. So if someone do you get a lot of people or younger farmers or new farmers coming to you for advice and mentorship?
It's beginning to happen. I still turn back to a couple of the younger blokes around here that are 15 years younger than me, because they're starting with fresh eyes and they're actually bringing new technology to agriculture, and I'm happy to learn from them about what's new and current. Now, that sounds a bit crazy, but
No.
it's and in the conversation we bounce off each other as well. In the tourist arena, I still have a few, but I'm becoming one of the old guys, and there's a lot of new product coming in, not agritourism, but because we have a very limited agritourism pool here in Tasmania and in Australia. But I am hugely engaged in the all of Australia tourism pool. And so now I'm contributing back to tourism operators coming to us for advice on how we do and what we do, and et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, it's a nice little community. There's only 10 or 12 farmers in our community, and we all get on really well together.
Excellent.
I've nearly forgotten the first part of the question.
It's okay. So I actually have one final question. So now there's this global agritourism network, and I know you're a part of it. How did you get introduced to it, and what do you see as the value? Like, obviously, it's a new organization and it's evolving. There's a lot of different people involved, so how it evolves, is to be determined. But what are your thoughts about how that could impact? What kind of impact could that have, or what kind of impact do you want to see it have?
I wish I could remember that word that my mentor told me. A vocational product of continuing the business into the future for next generations, as different to hobby farming and lifestyle farming, and a grow to sell model. So I did a quick short boot camp with a very astute lady, and one of her modules was a Zoom meeting with a Canadian tourism business consultant who talked about agritourism. So I subscribed up, paid my money, and got the Zoom link, and listened to this bloke from Canada talk about agritourism. And I'd been struggling here in Tasmania because of conflict with the hobby and the lifestyle, and a flashy celebrity business that was getting all the promotion and highlights and photographs and media exposure, when there's 20 or so really good, hardworking, long-term agritourism businesses in Tassie that weren't sort of getting recognition because we haven't fitted for a long time. And so I heard this bloke speak, and his name was Trevor from Bannikin Travel, if I'm allowed to endorse this Canadian company. And we sort of gelled because we were discussing sort of offline afterwards and emailing. And he said, Tim, he said, what you've got there is a pretty amazing story. And I don't think it's amazing. We just do what we do. But he said he was looking for a case study to present at the Global Agritourism Network workshop. And I said, oh, well, yeah. And he said, can I interview you? Just the same as you're interviewing me now. And we had a good old chat, and we talked about these values and things, and it teased out that we're at a very mature end of agritourism, but there's a whole lot of other stuff revolving around. And I'm very dogmatic, and my ego is pretty strong about what I think it should be, and with not enough consideration for everybody else. Anyway, one thing led to another, and he said, "Well, look, he would like to use us in his presentation, but if I was interested, how about I put in a paper myself?" And I was feeling a bit lost in the wilderness. So I grabbed my bat and ball and I bought a ticket to the conference in Vermont and went over under my own steam and presented and just gave a presentation on Curringa Farm and who we are and what we do. And Trevor portrayed Curringa alongside an agritourism business in Italy and another one in Scotland as part of his presentation. And so in the room, all these like-minded people from all different countries and walks of life and scale and type and everything, and the buzz was just phenomenal. And it opened my eyes to a whole heap of things. But the most important thing in the Global Agritourism Network is network. And so the conversations and friendships and just that, yeah, look, to be able to now go into one of 40 different countries and just pick up the phone or drop an email and say, hey, how you going? What's happening? And so I became engaged on the definitions committee because the definition of agritourism is so varied all over the world because of the nature of different countries and businesses and scale of businesses within those regions. So then around came the second conference last month, and I couldn't sort of not go because I just wanted to as part of my bucket list. Along the way, I was very, very fortunate to be invited by Scottish Agritourism to be a keynote speaker at their annual conference, and so that my personal journey is sort of I'm rewarding myself for the work that we've done to date, but also to share thoughts and information with people in Africa and throughout Asia and throughout North America and about just the stuff that we've chatted about this morning. Is that network is powerful. Now, how that comes back to the benefits for Australia, we, as the Australian and New Zealand Regional Committee, we're trying to work out and work with other stakeholders to say, hey, what does the non-government independent voice sound like to be a communication point for businesses that are doing or may want to do agritourism at their local regional level? Yes. Who are their contacts back at the state level? And how does the nation communicate and share ideas and thoughts as a single voice, and then be able to introduce or host or offer international visitation, which is also my baby as far as tourism, to come and share agri-tourism globally as a two-way journey.
Yeah. Okay.
How about that?
Wow. So one final question. So Tasmania is like the nickname Tassie? Is that you said it a few times, so I'm assuming it is.
Yeah, we just call it Tassie. Tasmania, Tasmania was named after, I'm going to get in real trouble here. I'm going to say a Dutch explorer called Abel Tasman. And so then Tasmania. Now, us Australians, we are very, very good at shortening as many words as possible to as short as possible. And so Tassie is just what it's called. And you've got a cartoon character. You've got the Tas Devil on
Tasmanian
TV,
devil.
that crazy little guy that spins around and creates a heap of a ruckus. And they are an endemic species of Tasmania. They're a ferocious little beast that has had an interesting journey as far as a facial tumour disease. And so there's millions of
Oh,
dollars of global research on looking after this little guy. And the power of marketing and media, that when I go around the world marketing and I say, oh, I'm from Tasmania, and then the word Tassie pops into the conversation, they say, hey, I know that little guy on TV, that crazy cartoon character. And that's the power of that big global media movie making company that actually owns the copyright of this word Tassie or Tasmanian devil. Through the legal channels. But our identity of Tasmania down here is very, very strong. And us at Curringa Farm are distinctly Tasmanian.
excellent. Well, thank you, Tim. It was what you've created is pretty amazing. I have a marketing background, so I'm so impressed by what your mom and you have done. And honestly, you really did a lot of, bare bones marketing. You know, you went and visited people, you connected, you networked, and it comes down to, even though we have all this social media and online stuff, I still really believe in the power of that real connection with people. So kudos to you for building such an amazing business off, continuing to build the business that your family started. So
Yeah, look, there's a lot of pride in presenting our own business, and we've got an amazing farm employee. She's a young lass. She's 22 or 23 years old, and she's been with us since she was 10. Her grandma's worked with us for 40 years.
oh
Um,
wow.
and she is absolutely amazing, and we've trained her up. She's like a daughter. And Jane and I've got a lot on our plate, and we're giving her more responsibility.
Good.
And this year, last year, Jane took her to Singapore on a marketing trip to meet the travel agents, and this year she had one day by herself at the Australian trade show, the one I mentioned. Jane and I went to, and then because I was coming back from Italy. And then I sat with her for the next 3 days. So we had 100 appointments in 4 days, or 85 appointments in 4 days. And so we were introducing her to the marketing, and she marketed it like it's her own. But it's really hard for me to let go of my baby. And lots of businesses must experience this, because when I'm sitting in a room marketing alongside a lot of employees that are pitching their hotels or their businesses that their boss or their family owns, and they're acting on behalf, whereas I'm acting as the product, and that gives us a massive amount of credibility. Uh, can I just touch on one thing that's a touchy subject for me?
Sure.
It's this new world of regenerative, because agritourism has got an alignment of regenerative um, at the ethical, sustainable, organic end of the conversation. And I think that while we are trying to define the word agritourism, there's also many, many definitions of regenerative.
I
And
was
it's
just
like
going to
this
ask
new.
you what's your definition? Because it is, I find that the word is used very differently.
Yeah. And and in my learnings from going to Italy and looking at other countries, and what agritourism means, and for African and Indian villages, and once again, these are gross assumptions that quite often agritourism may be an absolute necessity to sustain a village with food or education for the kids, or keep that village on its feet. In other areas, very mature areas of Italy and Austria, the system's very heavily engaged over hundreds of years. And then we've got different models throughout Asia and also throughout North America. I'm wavering a little bit here. I'm getting lost. But those differences, and in amongst it, this regenerative is a word that's being used. And I'm also struggling with regenerative tourism. It's like, come and see our product and we'll keep our coffee grinds and put them on the peas and grow our own food. And the world will be a better place. And it's sort of, this definition is it's really weird. So over the time frame of our land care, land conservation work that we've done on the farm with our tree planting and our fencing off our remnant, looking after our native birds and animals, that we were at the front end of the word sustainable about 20 years ago. Not literally, but when we were there,
Right.
when sustainable started. And we've been sustainable because it's just a good farming practice. We just do it. We look after our natural resources. But now regenerative is asking for sustainable's no longer good enough, because we want you to advance and fix everything and go carbon neutral and totally organic and no fertilizers, pests, all the stuff that is utopic's a harsh word, but it's what a lot of people are striving for in this, to make a perfect world.
Right.
And if you don't start in your vegetable garden and then increase it to your lifestyle block and increase it to your farm, nothing will ever happen.
Right.
But along the way, some of the real farmers that are farming very well, very sustainably, and producing food and fibre to feed the world, feel a little bit threatened by the conversation where they're regarded as not good enough for a portion of the regenerative movement. So this is a confusing conversation, and I don't wish to say we're regenerative, but what I wish to say is, over the last 40 years, over the last 20 years, by having the tourists come to our farm, one tourist returns us about the same amount of money as one sheep. So if we have 10,000 visitors, which is a high number for a small to medium business like us, then we have been able to run less sheep on the land that we have. So those less sheep are fatter, happier, healthier, have more lambs, require less inputs, and require less management and maintenance. Remember, I said we've simplified the farm to the point where we can deliver our money-earning time and value to our customers. We can also grow a lesser area of crops, and we use less chemicals and less fertilizers. We still use them to control and grow the things that we do, but we do slightly less of it, so that rotation is longer and the soil is healthier, and the yields we get off those crops are stronger.
Okay.
We can return some of the income from our tourism business into planting trees and doing conservation work to keep the farm as this little ecosystem that is in a good place. It could be a lot better, and we've still got a lifetime's work ahead of us to keep going. But we've enabled to find that balance of using the people and the finance to look after our natural resources of land and soil and water, and our production units of sheep and vegetables. And so that, to me, doesn't need a label. It's not good or it's not bad. It's just the way that all farmers ought to it's not the way all farmers ought to farm, because a lot of farmers don't have that diversity of the tourism component to prop up their farming business. And there's a phrase that says it's really hard to be green when your business is in the red. And so you've got to. It's a tough gig to do, but where we're at, and the happy place of our sheep and our crops and our land has been enhanced by the tourism business. And so I can put a label on that and call it regenerative, but I don't know if I want to put my foot into that regenerative conversation of the puristic farming, puristic right. Business model.
Are you getting any pressure to do that?
Well, I don't think so. But I don't engage in those conversations.
Okay.
But I feel that story of that 20, 30, 40 years of planting trees on the farm, we've got benefits now from trees that we planted 30 years ago.
Absolutely.
And so it's a lifetime journey. What I'm trying to say is it's really hard just to click your fingers overnight and suddenly be regenerative.
No.
And I think that's what a lot of people are waking up tomorrow morning and deciding that they would like to be it by Friday.
Right. Right. Absolutely. It's been. Absolutely.
I hope I haven't touched a nerve to some of your viewers on that one, and I'd hope you can balance it into the conversation.
No, absolutely. No, I think it was a very important point, and I'm glad you brought it up, because it is a lifetime journey of evolution and all the decisions you're making. And like you said, there's tons of things going into your farm that give back. So I appreciate what you said. And I think it's a very, very important point to make. And like I said, you're doing some amazing things over there. And I'm grateful that I was able to have this conversation with you and learn more about everything that you're doing. Well, I'm going to let you get your call that came in before. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Yes.
All righty. Have you been to Australia? You haven't been to Australia?
No, I have not. And it's on my bucket list.
Oh, well. All right. Well, we if you can wait till 2027, we're sort of kicking around. Well, we're putting in a bid to we would like to hold a global activity down here at some stage. But
okay.
If ever the opportunity arises, do look us up and come and stay.
I definitely will. Definitely. All right. Well, you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
Will do. Good on, Jen. Thank you. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye. I hope our AgriTourist podcast prompts you to think more about where your food comes from, whether it be your vegetables, fruits, meats, and even those sweet treats. Don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast with someone you think may truly benefit from or be inspired by it. Visit us at agra-tourist.com. Until next time. As we are learning from many of our farmers and entrepreneurs, strong connections help propel our visions. Through my interview with Lisa Chase from the University of Vermont Extension and Vermont Tourism Research Center, I was connected to an exciting and new organization called the Global Agritourism Network, or GAN for short. The Global Network is made up of agritourism stakeholders from around the world. They include farmers and ranchers, researchers, educators, community planners, policymakers, agricultural service providers, and tour operators, among others. It is currently free to join, so if you have any interest in agritourism, check them out at agritourism.eurac.edu/GAN, or just Google Global Agritourism Network. The link will be in our show notes as well. You never know, this global network may help you take your agritourism vision to the next level.